It's currently taken 10 minutes to get to this point. Yep. Where are you going, ma'am? Welcome back to another episode of Race Rats podcast. Um, as you can tell, G is not here, and I'm filming elsewhere today. I was supposed to film this episode while I was in Brisbane, but we are simply girls and forgot, which means I am stuck doing this episode alone now instead of being with the lovely Kira. Um, we're going to be talking about Baku. I am filming this the day after Singapore. Singapore will come out once G gets back. But before I start the episode, because it is the day after Singapore, there is something that I want to briefly touch on. Obviously, more will be spoken about in the next episode when we get more clarification. But coming into this weekend, there were sudden rumors about Daniel Ricciardo being let go from VCARB at the end of this weekend. That would mean that Singapore was his last race, but was given no notice of this. Team officials were asked all weekend whether this was true or not. Daniel himself was asked if this is true or not. Nobody had answers for us because nobody knows. It has come out since that even, the team personnel, the team principal himself, don't know what's going on right now. They don't know if Singapore really was Daniel's last race or if he will be back for Coda. It hurt watching the driver that really, really made me fall in love with the sport back in my teen years hold back from crying after the race in media duties, in the media pen, because again, he doesn't know if he's going to be racing again after this weekend, and he just really wanted to take it all in. And I don't think what Red Bull are doing is fair. Whether they replace him or not is one thing. I don't know what the point in replacing him at this point in the season is, considering he's been consistent. He's doing better than one of their other drivers who got to keep a seat. But the fact that there's so much uncertainty around this and it's been left up in the air and he got thrown to the wolves to just deal with it and not have any answers for the media or himself, it's hurtful to see. He is a staple of the sport, a phenomenal driver, a ray of sunshine of a human being. I mean, I have butterflies up my back tattooed because of Daniel Ricciardo's Enjoy the Butterflies, that little mental health note. And to see him go out with not a proper goodbye because nobody even knows if it's a goodbye, I don't think it's right. And I think that Red Bull really need to pull it together in the simplest terms without swearing because we don't want community service after this. Thank you, FIA. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to harp on that anymore while we wait for more details because there's nothing that's been said yet. But that might be the end of Daniel Ricciardo. Anyway, what we're really here to talk about today is Baku. Um, always an interesting race in Baku because those streets are not very forgiving. But jumping straight into it, free practice one had two go into walls. Now Baku is the famous track where we got I am stupid" from Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc also decided to recreate that this year in FP1 by going into a wall. Not the same wall, shockingly. The other driver to hit the walls and cause commotion was Franco Colapinto in his second race. First race. And he did really well. But yeah, into a wall in FP1. But the top three for FP1 were Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and Sergio Perez. You're going to see a bit of a trend because we do know that Baku is a track that Perez does well in. FP2 was much more boring, with Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, and Lewis Hamilton as your top three, and no real issues for that session. FP3 saw only one go into a wall, and that was Ollie Behrman, who was filling in for the weekend after K-Mag's little ban from his penalty points. Free the track, Tara. I just let him do what he wants. He doesn't have a seat next year. Let him have fun for his last couple of races. FP3 did have George Russell, Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris as the top three. Perez still falling within the top 10 though. Also would like to note that with his second race with Williams, Franco Colapinto is... I'm so tired, I need a nap after this. Franco Colapinto is doing phenomenally well in that Williams. For being brand new, he's pulling great laps, so very impressive. Rude. All right, now qualifying had some interesting things go on. First five out in qualifying were Esteban Ocon, Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas, Lando Norris, and Daniel Ricciardo. Now, Lando's Q1 exit was quite shocking, and it wasn't because he was pulling bad times. He unfortunately got caught in yellow flags and miscommunication. Yellow flags got pulled because Esteban Ocon had an issue with the car. It was not cooling properly, and unfortunately, it was the same sector Lando was coming through. They thought something had happened with Lando's car because he'd gone over the curbs. So they called him in thinking the yellows were for him. They weren't. He unfortunately had a Q1 exit. I don't think I want to touch on that. It was quite sad. So I'm not going to touch on that anymore. But yeah. Didn't deserve it. Didn't deserve that Q1 exit. He was doing so well. Next five out were Lance Stroll, Nico Hülkenberg, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, and Ollie Behrman. So Ollie Behrman, 11th, only just out of the top 10. I have faith in him for next year. I think he's going to do really well. And the top 10 were Alex Albon, outqualified by his new teammate, Franco Colapinto. Not anything towards Alex, just trying to show off how skillful Franco really is already. 2 races in. Phenomenal driver. Give him a seat next year, please. I'm begging. I don't know who we have to speak to. I don't care what I have to do. I'll do it. Just give Franco a seat. Thank you. Fernando Alonso in 8th, Lewis Hamilton in 7th, Max Verstappen down in 6th, George Russell up in 5th, Sergio Perez in 4th, Carlos Sainz in 3rd, Oscar Piastri in 2nd, and Charles Leclerc starting on pole position. Seeing Perez that high is quite shocking with the season we've had, but Baku does well for him. I'm not going to talk down on that. Unfortunately, that is not a starting grid, though. All the places pretty similar, except Esteban Ocon and Lewis Hamilton had to start from the pit lane because they had work done to their cars after Parc Ferme, and Pierre Gasly got disqualified or noted for something, and yeah, lap times deleted, back of the grid. So Gasly in 18th, Hamilton in 19th, Esteban in 20th. They were pit lane, which did move Lando Norris up to 15th. Thank you. Now, pretty interesting race. I missed a lot of what was happening at the back because what was happening at the front was so, it kept you on your toes, that was what the focus was on the whole time. But Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri were definitely fighting for that win. Oscar got a great overtake done and was able to keep that lead. Every time you thought that Leclerc was going to get closer, he didn't. He couldn't get it. He did, but he couldn't get the overtake done, which was really, really impressive work from Oscar. Great tire management from someone who we all know doesn't have great tire management. He's definitely doing better these days. So we did have 4 retirements from the race. First two were Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda, unfortunately. Tsunoda got a puncture from Lance attempting a move. I think Lance also ended up having to retire for a puncture or something. Another issue from that same incident. There was some great fighting going on at the front, though. That did include Sergio Perez, who was up in third, and Carlos Sainz, who was in fourth, trying to get that last podium spot. Unfortunately, Carlos did a great move as he's coming out of another corner after the move, though. Like, he cleared it, everything was fine. He was running it, he was in third, very clearly. As he was coming back onto the racing line and not going into a wall, unfortunately, Sergio Perez was not paying as much attention as he probably should have to the car's position, and just clipped the back wheel of Carlos's Ferrari, which just created chaos. And you saw Carlos's car, because of the clip, go sideways and also take out Perez into a wall. Pretty nasty to watch. And obviously, both of them were a bit shattered because they were hoping to have at least a podium, and that dream was taken away with a DNF. It was unfortunate to see, though, that while Carlos was very disoriented and saying, like, what happened? I don't understand what happened. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't turn the steering wheel or anything. It was a racing accident, but it was one that could have been avoided. In the time, he's still disoriented and trying to find out what's going on. Perez got out of the car and stormed over to him and pushed his head and had a go at him. Now, if another driver isn't out of the car yet after a big crash like that, maybe don't physically put your hands on them just don't do anything. Leave them alone, in fact. That's unsportsmanlike and should have been noted, but apparently both of them called it whatever. But Perez, my eyes are on you. I'm sorry that your Baku run was not as great as you would have liked. Do not put hands on another driver when you were at fault. Anyway, as I said, most of the action was at the front with Leclerc and Piastri fighting for that top spot, which did see George Russell coming into third. Oh my God, with the DNF of Carlos Sainz and Checo Perez. The most impressive, though, was not podium. Okay, well, first of all, our race winner. No, you know what? Hold on. hold the phone. All right. From 10th to 5th, sorry, 10th to 1st, point scorers for Baku were Oliver Behrman, Lewis Hamilton, Franco Colapinto in the points in his second race, Alex Albon, Fernando Alonso, Max Verstappen in 5th. Shockingly, Lando Norris in 4th. That's something that should be spoken about. Because not only did he do great work defending and saving his tyres, he went from 15th to 4th in the streets of Baku. The unforgiving streets of Baku. That's impressive. That is an impressive run. George Russell in 3rd after the DNF of Checo Perez and Carlos Sainz. And our two frontrunners that were battling it out, the final score ended up with Charles Leclerc in 2nd and Oscar Piastri in 1st. Now, this is Oscar's 2nd win. We know how I feel about the last one. This one was a very, very well-deserved win. His defending was amazing. His tyre management was amazing. The overtake he did to get that position, incredible. A round of applause for Oscar Piastri, honestly, because that Baku run was one for the books. Very impressed with that. Now, we had driver of the day as Oscar Piastri, rightly so. Fastest pit stop as Kick Sauber, and fastest lap, cinching it once again on the last lap, proving his name of last lap, Lando Norris. Phenomenal work getting from the 15th to 4th, but also knowing that that's an extra point for the team and going for that fastest lap and obviously getting it with the pace he's got at the moment. If he hadn't have had the unfortunate incident in Q1 of getting misinformation about the yellow flags and aborting the lap, he wouldn't have made it out in Q1. He would have been Q3, and the lap times he was providing all weekend. It's unfortunate. But once again, congratulations to Oscar Piastri. You deserve this win. You are phenomenal. Welcome to a multi-winners club. There's one more thing I want to speak about. There's really no media issues or anything to talk about that weekend. Everyone was just kind of, yeah. There has been media issues since, because unfortunately some Ferrari fans can't see past their own driver, which is unfortunate. I get that you're upset that Leclerc didn't get the win when you thought he would, but analysing footage to try and say that the McLaren car is illegal and has a mini DRS wing because it's a flexi wing that moves a bit with high pressure air in the fast speeds is a bit far. This has since continued to go on, and it got blown up all the way up until this week with Singapore. The FIA have done all the tests, proved it's not illegal. It's just the design of it, which was a smart design of McLaren. It doesn't provide any real benefit. But they kept complaining, and even at the start of this week in media for Singapore, Charles Leclerc said, well, we don't have any upgrades, we don't have an illegal mini DRS. Maybe don't, because it also has come out since that McLaren have obviously changed their car, and everyone made a big joke about it and how the FIA made them change their car. They didn't. The FIA themselves came out and said they offered to. So they got sick of everyone putting these complaints in to the FIA about how it was legal when it wasn't, and ended up just saying, if you find it that much of an issue, we'll change the wing. That's not going to do anything. And we'll talk about Singapore next episode. Obviously, that's the point of it. But it really did do nothing because the drivers did great. But it also got noted because of this that the Ferrari one is doing it's not flexing the same, but has more of a gap than it should. So maybe Ferrari needs to focus more on their rear wings rather than the McLaren. Other than that, we're going to cut this episode at that. This has been a long episode, not. But it's not so much fun to yap by myself. So we'll see you next time for Singapore, one of my favorite tracks. Back with G. But if you waited this long and watched this whole thing, thank you. This will not happen again. I do not want to be alone for this again. And if I come back next week crying, good luck, Charlie. Or Daniel Ricciardo. Good luck, V Carb and Red Bull. I'm in your walls. Thank you. Sit. Jesus! That was a threat!